Captain Sanjay Karve, Accountable Manager and Chief Pilot with Government of Maharashtra, joins us, and let's take that conversation forward. And we've also got Mark D. Martin. I'm going to start with you, Captain, first. My introduction, I guess, was the question in itself. Globally, aviation is considered to be the safest mode of transportation. There is data which we'll just pull out which shows that aviation travel or airline travel is even safer than road travel. But if that is so, then why suddenly all the headlines which we are getting in last 10-15 days, they are scary?
Okay, my personal opinion is COVID has taken a huge toll on the aviation industry per se. What is happening is, because of COVID, most of the airlines instituted a huge amount of pay cut. Now, since this January or February, the airlines are back in business. The air traffic in India has increased. If you look at the figures, month by month, the traffic is increasing at least 20 to 25%. And though we are not close to pre-COVID levels, but we are coming there. In another couple of months, we will be back to COVID levels. The people who were sacked have not been taken in back, or they are being taken in at much lower pay scales. And aviation is such an industry where currency is very important. Your past experience or expertise really doesn't count unless you have actually been working on the aircraft regularly for last 2 to 3 years. Now you can't suddenly take in someone who has not worked on the aircraft for last couple of years and expect him to work, which has resulted in existing people being overworked. Now if you continue overworking people, these lapses are bound to happen. If you look at regulations, regulatory wise, DGCA has got very stringent regulations in place. So we really cannot blame the DGCA. A large chunk of the blame lies with the airlines and the airlines management. When we talk of human error, more often than not, most of the accidents never discuss as to why a fully trained human being has made a mistake. We are 100% concentrating on the fact, A has made a mistake. There is a procedural error. No one asks this question. A fully trained aircrew or an engineer or a technician who's been doing this job for 20 years, 30 years, why has he made a mistake? There is something more to it. And that is where the human factor comes in. And here we are totally neglecting that human factor.
What is that human factor according to you, Captain, then? Is that airlines are squeezing it too much? Too much of demand suddenly, like you said, has come back. I mean, too much of demand has come back and there is a huge productivity crunch. Is that the only factor? Or there are things which are getting overlooked as far as quality check and balances are concerned? They are two different things.
I agree with you. What is happening is, over the past 2 years, when the airline started flying, they realized initially that they could manage with a limited manpower, which was 20% or 30% of the strength. Now when it is hitting the peak, as a management, you tend to think, if I could manage 30% of traffic, why not 60% of the traffic? Now there are all our low-cost carriers, whether it is Go First, Indigo, SpiceJet, everyone has done a huge pay cut. And with Jet Airways coming in, Akasha coming in, Air India coming in, the qualified people are moving away. If you cannot retain qualified people, competent people, and expect the balance of the people to work overtime, this is bound to happen. No one is doing compromises willfully. See, to assume like invariably someone on the CV street feels, these guys are not bothered about life. Definitely, everyone in the aviation industry who's working on an aircraft is aware at the back of his mind that his one signature or his one check means he's playing with lives of 150 people minimum. So no one takes that chances. This is a very wrong assumption.
Is it all about airlines trying to squeeze too much? Are they trying to make the impossible look easy? What was like a routine manpower requirement that is getting compromised, and the answer given here is COVID and productivity gains? Mark, the question was for you.
Hi, Nikunj. Nayantara and Aisha. Morning. Thanks for having me today. The issue here is more got to do with financial stability and sustainability as part of your operations. Now, pre-COVID to where we are today, airline operating costs have gone up by 40%. The receding dollar then was 69, 68. Now it's 80. The cost of oil was about 75 on the barrel. Today it's 150 plus. Um, Cost of lending, borrowing from banks, vis-a-vis airlines is ridiculously expensive today if you would approach the market. Private equity is staying away. The major issue is that the losses accumulated for the last 4 years, you can't brush that under the carpet, Nikunj. That is going to remain in your books. And now when you've got this upsurge, you are going to have what would be commonly known as growing pains and dealing with that financial loss that you're trying to make up for it. Now, regulations in India from the DGCA are not something that is invented by India. These are global EASA regulations. These are based on ICAO mandates. So it's a one size fits all for the whole world. Now, when it comes over to India, the DGCA adds on more vigilance, more surveillance onto your airline operating model. So what you're going to have is absolutely rigid and stringent regulations that are enforced, but it's how and to what level is the airline going to follow it. They are allowances. You allow deferred defects to some extent and degree, which means that you can take off with a part of an aircraft not working, provided that you fix it in 10 flights or 20 hours, but you're going to have to fix it in 10 flights or 20 hours. The point boils down here to is the discipline an airline has with an airline, and it all starts from the top, Nikunj. It's from the leadership. He takes a call on it. It's not that our airlines are out safe. If you look at the total number of flights, so an Indigo would have, for example, about 1,800 flights a day to the ratio of incidents, whereas a SpiceJet would have maybe about 700 or 600 flights to the ratio of incidents. So that tells you the broad framework, and then you start adding data for Air India or Vistara. So you've got a sample size of exceedances to the total number of flights. So we're not that bad from a bigger perspective, but the issue here is more of this, the small ones that get you. And it's also very relevant that airline financial health needs to be checked. And that's not the DGCA. The DGCA is a regulator. The DGCA is an airworthiness compliance regulator. The Ministry of Civil Aviation needs to work with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. We're going to have financial stat audits of airlines to establish how sustainable are they. And there's a reason if they cut corners with buying parts or spares, there's a valid reason as to why that happens. And that's something which has to be given. Now, you can't even blame the government, Nikunj. In all honesty, in all fairness, ECGLS was given last year to airlines to help them overcome financial stress. So where is the ECGLS money? That's taxpayer money. That's got to go back to the government at some point, right?
Right. But Martin, I mean, what is the solution to this? You've highlighted in depth all the parameters and the pressures that the airlines are facing. And, sure enough, I think the onus of this rests on the airlines, and there can't be any blame game to this. The regulator definitely doesn't have any role to play here, because these are lapses, and these are real lapses which are now coming to the fore. What can be done?
Strong governance for airlines. Absolutely, the operating model. What airlines were told to work and function within as part of the overall framework, whether it's the European Aviation Safety Agency, which, by the way, is ratified in India, ICAO, DGCA, are they actually following those to the T? Because if you follow those to the T, you're going to have to put in capital, resource, and knowledge. Three important parameters to making an airline functionality work. Eventually, an airline is just a system. The Indian Railways is a transportation system, and so is air transport. And it doesn't question the fact that an aircraft is unsafe. I mean, if you lost an engine and a wing, you can still make a safe landing. But how many, a wing and a prayer situations are we going to see? Our aviation sector is the fastest growing in the world. We're also amongst the largest at the moment. And from compliance, there's also got to be a softer oversight to see exactly where the problem is. every part in aviation is imported. Even a nut comes out of the US or Europe. That's $80 to the rupee from what was 69. Operating costs, import, freight, GST, tax. Now you started, and now you've added a tax layer on jet fuel. All of this is gonna hit you somewhere, right? And if collectively, you can soften the blow, look at operating management systems, relook at financial health, work around an airline. If airline has to cut back on the fleet deployment, manage it in somehow so that you're providing a safe, reliable service to the consumer.
Correct. So your point being that it is up to the airline, which is a system of its own. I'm going to take that point forward and come to Captain Karve. Both you and Mark are saying this is not the ministry's problem, this is not the DGCA's problem. It's the airlines which need to fix it. But Captain Karve, there's a story we broke over the weekend right here on ET Now, as well as ET Now Swadesh, which has been followed up by many other media houses as well as aviation bloggers. And that is of a letter which has been written by the Technical Staff Association to aircraft lessors, including Airbus, about how non-technical staff are now handling these aircraft. Non-technical staff are also managing operations on ground at airports. So Captain Karve, isn't that the job of the regulator to at least ensure that it is the technical staff, the trained staff that are actually on ground doing all of this?
If you go through the regulations, the DGCA has laid down very clearly the qualifications, experience and expertise required, whether be it the ground staff or the air staff being in the air or people maintaining the aircraft. Even for someone as a flight dispatcher or operations officer or a safety officer, there are laid down regulations, laid down courses which are required to be done. A cursory glance, at newspapers in the last couple of months, you will find so many advertisements, jobs required in airlines, jobs available in airport, $18,000 to $30,000, 18 to 30,000 rupees. Tell me honestly, how are you going to pick up people from the street? You are not willing to give your today's four-wheeler to a roadside people or roadside mechanic who actually earns more than 40,000 rupees a month. And a technician today who's maintaining a 737NG is drawing about 18 to 20,000 rupees a month. Isn't there a huge disparity? Now, where does the ministry come into play? How does the regulator come into play? The DGCA does not decide on the pay structure. The DGCA decides on what are the qualifications required, what is the experience required, what is the expertise required, and what are the checks required to be undertaken. It is up to the airline to follow it. He is a regulator. He is a policeman. He can't be standing on the road and stopping every vehicle and saying, move behind the zebra line. It is up to the vehicle owner to ensure that.